Alright, here we are with the Monster Crown TCG Poor Man's Edition, Edition 3. We've had a lot of changes since the last playtest and everything, so we're here to go over how to play the game with the updated rules. So, as you can see here, we have two separate decks. This is going to have your location cards. We'll get to what that does in a minute. Your main deck, and that's going to have like monsters, fate cards, adventure cards, NPCs, all those wonderful things. And the goal of the game, obviously, is to take the things from these decks, and you're going to build up a team of monsters that you're going to attempt to beat your opponent with at the end of the game. So, the types of cards that we have, first of all, you'll see that we have Darwall, one of the starters, and it is a starter type monster. Those will be separate, and you'll always start with one of them outside of your deck at the beginning of the game. Then you have cards such as normal monsters, like good old Rodask here. And then you have NPC cards, Art Pending, Adventure cards, and Fate cards. And we'll go over what each one of these do. Alright, so, monster cards. So as you can see here, it has like the type and everything, all the things you would expect from good old Monster Crown. Down here at the bottom is kind of hard to see with this glare, but there's a location requirement at the bottom of this card, and it says Flatlands. Now what that means is that as long as I have a Flatlands location card out, which we'll go to the playing of those in a minute, I can play that monster. Now it doesn't go to my team or anything, it'll go over here into the wild. The wild is the area where cards like monsters and NPCs will be played, so that you can encounter them with the rest of your team. So, for instance, Rodask here has 50 power. Once again, really hard to see, but 50 power, and Darwall has 150. So during my turn, I can use one of my turn actions to use Darwall, attack Rodask. I obviously have more power, and then that will add Rodask to my team. So that's pretty much the rundown of monsters, pretty simple. Then we have NPC cards. Here we have Storklift in particular. So Storklift, or any NPC, once again, will also get played out into the wild, and then whenever you encounter it for your turn using one of your actions, its effect will activate. Storklift in particular says on encounter, search your deck for a monster, reveal it, add it to your hand, then shuffle 2 cards from your hand into your deck. How fun. Alright, next, let's go over adventure cards. So adventure cards, for anyone familiar with Magic or anything, function at about sorcery pace, or the same as spells in Yu-Gi-Oh! So you can play them on your turn, and just not in response to anything. So in between actions, but other than that, at any point during your turn. So for instance, this card, Just Over the Horizon, it has an option, choose one. You can play a location card or play 2 location cards face down. Alright, and last type of card, we have Fate cards. Fate cards can be played at any time in response to any action. For instance, if your opponent plays a monster into the wild, you can play a Fate card. If your opponent pretty much announces anything or does anything, you can do things in reaction other than normal turn actions such as drawing cards, playing location cards, things like that. And the same, you can use these on your turn just like you would an adventure card or in response to anything that would happen on the field. This one in particular, Destructive Blow. Target monster gets plus 150 power for its next attack, and then at the end of the attack, you would place 2 wear counters on it. And we'll get to what those do in just a minute. Alright, so we went over how to win. You're going to build up a team, you're going to use it to fight your opponent at the end. But to get there, let's go over the turn-by-turn rundown. Alright, so we'll just use these cards as my hand. Alright, so start the game with my Darwall in play. Have a hand of 5 cards at the beginning. So the first thing that happens on my turn is I'll draw an additional card, add it to my hand. Good old Trove. The next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to play the top card of my location deck face down next to my starter monster. So, how location cards work, You play one at the start of each of your turns, and then obviously there are cards that allow you to play more or remove them from either your side or your opponent's side of the field. Um, this one in particular is a Woodlands, so it lets you play Woodlands monsters, and there's no energy requirements or anything like that. As long as you have this Woodlands at the top of your stack here, you can always play any Woodlands monster. So for instance, a lot of them have on-play abilities. Well, presently all of them have on-play abilities. This one says play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal a monster from among them that has this location as its habitat, and then play it. Pretty simple. So how that's going to work as far as, so like I said, the top card of this is what matters for being able to play monsters. So let's say that I have, a handful of location cards here. Twice per turn, I can change any of the cards in my location stack to be the top card. And that kind of allows you to play things, but also doesn't allow you to just, play everything constantly and, let things spiral out of control. And of course, the biggest thing about location cards is that once there are 15 total location cards on the field between you and your opponent, the person who played the last location card on that turn, they encounter the other player, and it begins the final showdown between two players. That being said, there's also other opportunities for combat. For instance, if like right now I have this mountains location down here, if the top card of my opponent's location deck, or journey pile, that's what we'll call this, if the top card of my opponent's journey pile is also a mountains, I can use one of my encounters for the turn to fight my opponent. So we'll talk about a couple things there. So first of all, I said one of my encounters for the turn. So during your turn, there's a handful of actions you can take. You can do 2 encounters in your wild, so that's encountering NPCs, encountering monsters. You can do 2 of those per turn. You can play up to 2 cards into your wild per turn. So once again, NPCs, monsters, things like that. Then you can also switch the top card in your journey pile twice per turn. So these things just allow you to kind of control the flow of your deck and everything, and also give you the opportunity to do things like if you know that your opponent probably isn't running any tundra locations in their deck, you can use one of your switches for this per turn to put a tundra location on top and, maybe to potentially save yourself from getting beat down by a player who might be ahead. Alright, so let's say that you did encounter your opponent. So combat in general, we went over the basics of it earlier, bigger number wins, but there are more things to it than that. For instance, let's say that my team consists of Darwall, and then Rodask and Primagon. So, if I encounter my opponent, the person who does the encounter will send out a monster, so they kind of initiate combat. So I'll send out my Rodask. Alright, let's say that my opponent then, in return, a card from my hand, but I'll use it, sends out their Trove. Now, obviously, Trove is going to beat the hell out of Rodask, even if you didn't know the power here, if you know anything about Monster Crown. So, Trove has 300 power, Rodask has 50. So, Rodask is going to be beaten, and whenever you're beaten, your card is placed face down, and we'll go over what allows you to remove the beaten condition for monsters here in a second. So, if this was just the case, it would seem that then my opponent could just simply sweep my entire team, and that would be kind of unfun. But the next thing that happens is after Trove has fought a card, it gets a wear counter. And any monster that survives combat will receive one of these wear counters. And you can use dice or anything to keep track of those. And what this is it is a cumulative minus 50 that is applied to monsters. So this allows you to send out multiple monsters and fodder them to slowly attempt to get your opponent down to a defeatable status. And going back, so then after I send out both of those monsters, Trove is at minus 100, which puts him at 200. I send out my Darwall, and I'm still a little short, but then I could in response play my Fate card, Destructive Blow, get the plus 150 for the turn, and then afterwards be left with 2 wear counters myself. Which, if he has more, if the other player has more monsters, I'm probably in a bad way there. However, if they don't, cool, I just beat them. So, what happens whenever all of your monsters are beaten? Well, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to take the top location card of your journey pile and place it at the bottom of your location deck, and then you're going to discard cards down to 5 cards. So you're kind of just losing items, running back to town, essentially. Um, so that's most of your actions per turn and the description of how most of the cards function. As I said, your goal is to, once the 15 location cards are in play between both players, you're going to have this one big, hopefully epic engagement of combat amongst the teams that you've acquired throughout the time. Oh, one thing I did forget. So whenever your monsters are beaten, the only 2 ways to remove the beaten condition are there's a few cards that remove the beaten condition, like Kiri and stuff like that. And then if your team is wiped, if they're all beaten, all of your stuff is healed up. So at least you get that out of the fact that, you got set back pretty handedly. But that is the Monster Crown TCG in a nutshell. It's pretty simple. Draw a card, play a location card, play things in your wild, attack things or encounter things in your wild, and shift things around here if necessary. Um, the game, for the most part, really lends to itself and wants you to play the game. All these cards help you search for things. Um, there's a lot of engines in here that allow you to manipulate your deck in many fashions. So uh, next I'll be doing a playtest actual video so that you guys can see how this looks, and we'll just be going over some key elements and just some dynamic combat moments. And I hope you guys enjoy, and if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.